Nothing's off the table.
All right. Welcome to Room 37 Podcast by Push Punk TV. We have today our guest is Joseph, former frontman of Cro-Mags. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. And current singer of Bloodclot.
Yeah, we're gonna jump
Yeah.
into that. We're here with my co-host Richard Vernon. Hi, Richard.
Hey there, how you doing, man? Good to see you, John. Thank you for joining us. I
Yeah,
appreciate
man.
it. I know you're a busy guy.
Thank you for having me.
Mhm.
Yeah, Rich. Let's just jump into it and
Okay, so John, lovely to meet you for the first time. So I've done a bit of digging around. Obviously, I knew some of your music anyway, but I've also done a bit of digging around into some of the other things you do in your life, and I was really looking forward to talking to you. I think this is going to be pretty interesting. So I just wanted to start, if it's okay with you, I just wanted to start on the music, which the big thing all three of us have got in common. So, John, how old were you when you started playing, and what first got you into music?
Uh, Let me see. The first music I started doing was the original lineup of the Cro-Mags, which formed in 1981. It was the Bad Brains manager, Dave Hahn, playing drums. He also played drums for this band called The Mad. And Dave Stein was on guitar, Harley on bass, myself on vocals. And I don't know, we rehearsed for, I don't know, 4 or 5 months. And then the band broke up. And at the time, I was roadieing for the Bad Brains and living at their studio. So we formed a band called Bloodclot, and it was made up of the Bad Brains roadies and soundman J.W., who did the first Bad Brains album. Like, we all lived at his studio. I was homeless. I didn't have a place to live. Fucking, I got in a fight with this Puerto Rican gang, stood up for myself, and they were like, yo, fucking move in, work with us. So yeah, so Blood Clot formed, and we did a bunch of shows on that first Bad Brains Southern tour in '81, and we opened up for them, came back, ended the tour in New York, and
Mm.
yeah, that's where the music really started. Playing music, but I started going to shows when I was 15, and on the street, I was living on the streets of New York, and sort of fell into the punk thing a bit. I had seen Zeppelin and all the rest of the shit. I grew up on soul music, saw the original Zeppelin, Sabbath, and then all that, and just fucking got into the punk stuff. I heard the Ramones. I was living in Rockaway Beach on the street, so I would see them hanging out at 116, where everybody got off the train over there, and they're like, fucking these punk rock legends, and I started going to shows and all that, and that
That
was
was not the answer I was expecting at all, John. Listen, I can't just let that go. So not many people you talk to say, so I saw Zeppelin back in the day. So tell me more about that.
It was the June run. Like, when you see those shows, Led Zeppelin, 1977, like the song, like, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
of
mean, it
course.
had the song remains the same logo or whatever the fuck, but um, yeah. So I saw them 2 nights at the Garden with Bonham and everything, and I was into rock, but at the same time, I got into Bowie in 74, 75. I heard the Stooges, raw power. I was like, what the fuck is this? And so, New York was like this eclectic mix of, like, I was into like the soul music growing up, all the black music, and that it was just that's what New York was about. And then I was also into the rock shit. Aerosmith rocks, like, the album
Mm,
rocks, and just but
mm,
the Zeppelin, it was fucking unbelievable, man. I mean, they're still to this day remain like one of my favorite bands. I trained to their songs, like just
mm,
yesterday, or the no, I'm not sorry. Yes, not the day before. I did a fucking really hard run, and I had this whole I had a Zeppelin playlist, so I was
Mm,
big,
mm,
but
mm,
yeah,
mm.
like I saw I saw Zepp, Zepp back in the day, man, and
Mm.
just
Yeah, that's as good as
phenomenal.
it's as good as it gets. Sometimes I meet people. I've met other musicians who sometimes say to me, I don't really get Led Zeppelin, and I don't even know where to begin with that conversation.
I've heard people say Robert Plant was overrated and all this shit.
Mm,
It's like, dude,
mm,
you don't even know what you're talking about. And,
yeah.
AJ, who played in the Cro-Mags for years and he was in Leeway, like Jimmy Page is like one of his favorite guitarists. And, even John Paul Jones doesn't really get the credit, but,
Totally.
he was there, bass, and played the keyboards. And Bonham's just a fucking monster.
Yeah.
And Jimmy Page, unbelievable. And Robert Plant, I was,
Yeah. It's
it
those
was,
two bands. I sometimes think that if people are talking about heavy rock, I sometimes think, well, Led Zeppelin and Motorhead have everything covered.
yeah, yeah. Well, I saw Motorhead back in the day too, so I was a fan of Motorhead. When I mean, Bloodclot covered Ace of Spades in '81, so I mean,
Okay.
it was like they were influential on us too, and I
Yeah.
kind of felt like, and I researched into like Hawkwind and the band that he was in.
Mm.
I heard Lemmy was I forget if he was a roadie for somebody.
Yeah, Hawkwind.
Yeah, but then he was playing in the band too after that, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I thought he worked with Jimi Hendrix. I read some story about him and
He
Hendrix.
did. Yeah, he wrote it for Jimi Hendrix. And a
Yeah,
weird little
yeah,
aside,
yeah.
Lemmy went to the same two schools as I went to. And Lemmy's first gig was in my local kind of church hall. It was before I was there, obviously, but I used to go and play table tennis in this church hall. And I only found out like 20 years later that I'd been
Ah,
in the same school as him, and that where he'd done his first gigs with the Rocking Vickers, I went and played table tennis on a Saturday night.
ah. How old are you?
I'm 58.
Oh yeah, I got a few years on you.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So yeah, interesting. So the earliest influence, that's incredible. I can't even get into half of those in the soul stuff. That's the difference, I think, growing up in New York. So if people ask me, what were you listening to, man? I was still flying kites at 15.
Yeah.
There's a totally different thing where you
Well,
were.
here's what the thing was. Like, I grew up in foster homes and being institutionalized, and I was
Yeah,
in this horrible fucking foster home in Long Island. And the only thing that got me through all of this shit that they did to us was music.
yeah,
That was it. That was my only, like place of any type of peace. They made us live in a garage with fucking garbage, and it was music was that's what it was all about. And and my older brother, um, we ended up together in St. John's Home for Boys in '76, because like that foster home got shut down and they dumped us in some other ones. But I mean, they were just like, these kids are damaged fucking goods. I was getting fucked up already at 12 and 13 and stealing. And so, the beautiful thing about New York, was it was such, you know, it was such a rich place for any type of music that you wanted to check out. I mean, I remember going to see the Cars in Central Park and saw Blondie in the '70s, and
wow,
all that's yes, because being on the streets, my gig was we would go buy the little Schaefer bottles for fucking 50 cents and go flip them for $2 at the Schaefer concerts in Central Park. So it was always a hustle, but it was a hustle that led me to like some cool music. Just like some concerts, I was trafficking heroin for these junkies, and then got into this selling fake acid at the concerts, and then like trading it for real acid, and then going to see the concerts. So, it was
wow.
always, you had to be very inventive, but it was all around music. And New York was like, you know,
Do you know
the epicenter for everything, man.
that's amazing, John. I mean, I did some research and I read about some of your background, and I found it very moving, John. To be honest, reading about some of the things you've been through, and I never, I can't relate to that because that's not the life I had at all. And so, often as I've got older, I've felt very grateful for the fact that my childhood was so kind of normal, and so many of my friends, some of my favorite people, had really difficult childhoods and early adult life. So it sounds like music to you was more than just, it wasn't just a hobby. It was almost like a kind of a place of safety, almost like your church kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely was, and I used to dream like I didn't even know what touring was, but I used to dream about like getting in a van and with my brothers or whatever, and just like traveling across the country and seeing music, and
Mm.
so it kind of like was a major part of my life, my entire life. Even when my mom was going through hell, my father was a professional boxer from Ireland and fucking raped her, tried to murder her, like just crazy shit. And
Mm.
she would just put on Motown 45s on the little record player, like no matter what. We were like hiding out like in like projects and tenements to try to get away from them. But no matter what we were going through, she would put on these little 45s and we would dance around, and I would like sing into a fucking broom like I was a singer, she used to tell me. And it's just like, it was just, I don't know if it was past life. I believe in that. If I was doing music in a past life, but the attraction
Mm.
was just like, and somebody asked me the first time, you ever perform live, was it like, were you nervous? I said, man, I gotta tell you, like, I just felt like at home, like, and it was HR from the Bad Brains that put that first microphone into my hand and was like, yo, nah, you're not playing drums. You got too much energy, whatever. You need to be out front. And I don't know if it was that I was a shitty drummer or he was just being honest. But, I just like, it was just a natural feeling. I wasn't nervous, nothing. I just went out, and I think the first show we opened for them might have been Philadelphia on that tour, and you know,
Yeah,
just great.
amazing. So back, that's incredible, John. So back to the music. So you're listening to Zeppelin stuff, the Stones, Motown. So when punk first came along, what did that feel like to you?
Uh, well, like I said, I heard like I was in Garden City in this one foster home in '75, and like it was a real preppy town. So you either had like jocks and preps, and they called us the heads. Like we were the ones getting fucked up and like, just wild motherfuckers. Like, in Garden City, which was a very kind of wealthy town, but we were like the rejects. And I remember like this dude one day, I was walking down by the stores and he had this boom box and he was playing like fucking the Stooges. And I'm like, yo, what the fuck is that? He's like, this is the Stooges, man. And like I was like, wow. Like, and I just sat there listening to it and I was like, I think it was fucking search and destroy or whatever. I'm the world's forgotten boy, the one who searches to and destroys. And like I was like, I identified with it because I was like, I am the world's forgotten boy. Like my mom fucking dumped me in a foster home. She had her own problems with depression and suicide, and they had her on drugs. She was unfit. So the state took us away. I just felt I identified with that whole thing. And then like I started hearing the Ramones and like summer. I just wrote a short film I'm going to be shooting next summer. And it's basically about that summer of punk in New York City, which was like really the first full summer that I was out on the streets and seeing all the punk rockers hanging out and, going through all that stuff. But, then when the Sex Pistols record came out and The Damned and all this stuff, the Dead Boys playing Maxes and CBs, and and I was just this little kid, and Hilly would be like, that owned CBs, would be like, you could come in and see the band, but if I catch you with a drink or doing drugs, you're 86th for life. So like it was kind of cool to be, in one sense, it's every kid's dream, like, yo, 14, 15, I was 15 in 77 and I'm out. I got nobody telling me what to do. I'm on the streets. I'm hustling. I'm fucking walking around with hundreds of dollars in my pocket. I'm going to shows. I got this 19 or 18-year-old punk rock girlfriend. Like, it was every kid's dream, but at the same time, it was a lot of, I saw people get murdered in front of me, and just fucking, it was, punk gave like, it was just, and later on the rap music came, and I worked at a lot of the underground clubs as security and whatever the fuck. So, and I was into the music because I got locked up in 78 and I started hearing, that early hip hop, Africa Bombada and fucking, I never heard the word homeboy. I was locked up in Spofford in the South Bronx, which I was the only white dude in the whole facility. And then I was like, wow, this music, is from the street, and they made something out of nothing the same way the punks did. So I kind of saw the similarities of that. And then obviously, after I got out of being incarcerated for 2 years, I went into the military, and then I met the Bad Brains in 80, and then the whole hardcore explosion happened, and I was like, this is fucking it too, this is like, wow, man. Like, I was in Norfolk at the Taj Mahal, and before the Bad Brains came there, the Teen Idols and the Untouchables came down there, and I was still like pogoing and doing the whole New York shit. These kids just came with shaved heads and chains and boots, slam dancing, diving off the stage, and I was just captivated by that shit. The next week, shaved head, boots, up in DC, fighting rednecks and whatever the fuck with all the DC guys, Henry Rollins and Ian Mackay and the whole posse up there. But I got to see, you know, those genres of music really came from the street. Wasn't this? It was like I didn't even know how to play a fucking instrument, nothing. Like, we were just like, the Bad Brains were very accomplished musicians. That's why I feel they were able to do what they did. They were into jazz fusion. I remember looking at the studio, and Doc was like, they called me Squids because they met me when I was in the Navy, and he was like, yo, Squids, this is the band. The Bad Brains know how to play because of this band. And then he put on Return to Forever, Romantic Warrior, and then like Mahavishnu and like Birds of Fire and all this shit. And I mean, it went over my head. I didn't really get it, but I was like, now I'm like, holy shit, like those musicians. You listen to fucking Lenny White play drums on RTF, Return to Forever. Listen to Earl, and you'll see exactly where Earl got that in the pocket, kind of drumming stuff. But yeah, it was definitely like street music. And then, like I said, I saw the whole evolution of hip hop. I mean, Cro-Mags was signed to Profile Records with Run DMC, Smooth the Hustler, Special Ed.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so like I got to see all those dudes up in the office and all that. And I used to sell weed to Russell Simmons, who was one of the brothers of the guys in DMC. So being in New York, you just were in the middle of everything back then. It was like, that's what New York was all about. I always say it was like the melting pot,
Yeah, it sounds like it's incredible listening to that stuff, because a lot of that stuff you're saying like 14, 15 is so young.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like by the time you got to your mid-20s, you'd lived about 3 different lives.
Man, I lived 3 different lives by the time I was fucking I spent like my 16th birthday in Spofford. Like, I mean, that place was fucking crazy. And like just the streets. Like I remember like when my memoir first came out, a lot of these people were writing memoirs that turned out to be bullshit, a million little pieces and all this. And like, so my book came out, and this fucking guy from the Village Voice read it. He's like, hey, he contacted me and was like, hey, I would love to interview you about your book. And I remember I met him at Kate's joint, and she was all friends with the Beastie Boys and Luscious Jackson and that whole. She was down with the whole Beastie crew, and she owned a vegan restaurant called Kate's Joint. So I go in there and I sit down, and he takes my book and pushes it across the table, and he's like, dude, come on. I was like, what? Like, he caught me off guard. He's like, there's no way that you did everything in this book and you're still alive. I said, bro, I did shit I couldn't put in that book because some of it got no statute of limitations. And then he was like, well, is there anybody, whatever the fuck he's like, well, who can verify this stuff? I said, call my mom, call my brothers, call, Bupers, the Bureau of Personnel, Military, whatever the fuck, Freedom of Information. Go look at all the shit where I was locked up, what I went through, the foster homes. So,
wow.
He kind of was like, still whatever. And then I kind of took offense to it. I'm like, you know what, man? Fuck you. Fuck this whole fucking article you want to write. It was Rob Harvilla from the Village Voice, and he called my mother, and I get this call from her, and I wasn't really tight with her back then because we still had a lot of issues to resolve. She's like, yeah, I got this call from somebody from the newspaper about your book. I was like, yeah, I meant to send you a copy of that, and I said, what did I said, well, what did he say? Oh, he started going through all the stuff that you had in the book, asking me if it was true. And I was like, I told him everything in the book is true. But then I was walking by in the Manhattan, and every Wednesday the Village Voice came out, and they would put it in these little boxes on the street. And I got the front cover of the Voice. It said the brutal life and times of John Joseph, the Bloodclot Diaries. So, it was, I didn't ask for all that shit to happen, but I'm a survivor, man. And that's, I just had to deal with shit when it happened. I mean, even my military shit, like I was a drug addict, and I chose going into the military over going back to lockup. And I started smuggling in the military, going to Jamaica and wherever else, and bringing back pills and weed. And I had a drug business in Norfolk. As a matter of fact, when I met the Bad Brains, like June of 1980, I sold their manager LSD. So
that was one of the things when I was looking into your background a little bit, trying to get a handle of who you are, and past the music and past what people know about you. One of the things I wrote down was this guy's had to survive.
Yeah, man. I mean, I did have to survive, and it was just the set of circumstances that would deliver. I was conceived out of a rape. My father broke in and raped my mother. I didn't know that. And then she was like, the whole family said not to have you, but I couldn't do that. So the person that I thought was the cause of all my problems, actually, when I found out what she was going through, turns out she was the reason I even had a life in this life. And, the survival aspect, when I sang about, street justice or survival of the streets, that shit was real. That wasn't like fantasy life. You get these people writing shit, and you don't live that life. And to me, I'm like, if you don't live it, don't sing about it. These fake fucking gangster rappers and all this. For me, I don't care about that anyway. It's more of, I found my spiritual path in this world, so that's what I kind of interjected in the Cro-Mags and everything like that. But
Mm.
I mean, having to go to Spofford, and I had to put a chair over somebody's head the first night I was up in the wing, like fucking like and the dude was 3 times my size. Like that's I got stabbed on the street, shot in the leg on it, like just thrown into the mix, man. Like
Mm.
um and I kind of started seeing that I was going to a really bad place. And when
Mm.
I know it's cliche, some people say, getting locked up saved my life, but in retrospect, it's actually true because I was very violent on the streets, and that's the way you had to be in New York City in the 70s. If you let anybody walk up on you and do shit, you know, you, it wasn't going to end good for you, man. Like I said, I saw people get murdered in front of me. So any
Yeah.
sign of weakness on the streets of New York City in the 70s, and you became a victim. And
Amazing.
that's
Amazing. It's so yeah. Well, that's impossible for me to relate to, but fascinating to hear that stuff. John, I just want to. I think I know Tony had a couple of things he wanted to ask you, John. Can I just
yeah.
Tony, just
Hey,
you here? Yeah.
John, real quick. I also lived in New York periods of my life, and yeah, I we had Roy Mayorga, the drummer.
Oh yeah, that's my dude, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and he told me a crazy story about Gigi Allen. I was
About who?
Gigi Allen.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, and I was wondering if you ever run into him or Jerry Only or Sid Vicious in that area. That
Well, Gigi Allen, I saw him the day that he died. He was fucking. I think he
at
played
the
a
gas station.
yeah, the gas station, and he was running around like fucking covered in shit. And I saw him actually that day, and I heard he died later. That was on like Avenue B and like Second Street, the gas station over there. Jerry Only, my friend Googie ended up playing in the drums and the Misfits on Walk Among Us and all that. So I kind of knew him a little bit. Like I saw them play Great Gildersleeves and all that. There's a picture of me. I posted it online, and I was sitting on the stage at that show behind Glenn, like just looking at Glenn. I didn't see them when they played Max's in '77 or um I was really caught up in the drug shit a lot more. Like so like if I happened to be in the city and stumbled into Max's or CB's, I would kind of go see who the fuck was there. I saw the Ramones in April of '77 at CB's. So like, yeah, Jerry Only, Danzig, I would see occasionally with the Misfits, but who else did you say?
What about Johnny Thunders?
Johnny Thunders, I would see hanging out, the Heartbreakers and all. As a matter of fact, the first time I went to CB's, I got the shit beat out of me because I smoked dust with this dude. Like in Queens, he was a dust head. This guy, Crazy Dave Dolan, and see, Max's was like, I do this walking tour, and I tell the whole story about the first time I went to Max's. It was initiation by fire. I got the shit beat out of me because we took 14th Street, what they call Union Square Park now, was a drug supermarket. So we went across the street and we bought Tuinals, Placidyls, took a bunch of pills. I'm all fucked up. I went up to the second floor where the bands played, and it was getting bounced around and fucking pogoing. I don't even know who the fuck was playing, but it was some wild ass punk band. And then I just came back downstairs, and I was sitting on the floor against the front entrance of the building, and the downstairs was a separate entrance. That was the original Max's Kansas City. It was a steakhouse, and it was only one floor. So Andy Warhol, they used to do poetry in there and all that. There was no upstairs for the bands to play. But anyway, so they kept that downstairs bar. There would be a DJ and whatever the fuck. And the door comes kicking open, and like I heard this ruckus to my left, and I'm just like nodded out. And this dude crawls over and he's like, John, help. And it was Dave Dolan, and they had beat the shit out of him because he stole money off the bar. And it was Johnny Thunder's crew. And they were like, you're with this motherfucker, and just start. I mean, they beat our ass from Max's Kansas City all the way to 18th Street, and like finally left us alone. But yeah, I would see all of those people. I would see Blondie over there. Like I wasn't in like tight with like they didn't. I was kind of an outsider to a big degree. I was a kid. I didn't know my ass from my fucking elbow. But then I dated this girl and she knew a bunch of people. So it was like, you would just see people around, I would see the Ramones hanging out, in Rockaway and stuff like that. So they had the song Rockaway Beach, and, we could hitch a ride to Rockaway Beach. And that was the whole shit. You would go into the city, go clubbing, go crazy, they called it breaking night, where you stayed out, fucking, there would be after hours clubs. There was a punk rock after hours clubs. And I've yet to meet one single person that remembered this club. It was called Stickballs, and it was a fucking after hours punk club. And my girl at the time took me there, and we walk in and people were like having sex right in, like, when you walked in. And so like, and then you would like catch a fucking train or whatever, or hitch out to Queens Boulevard, to Woodhaven Boulevard, to Cross Bay Boulevard, and end up in Rockaway Beach and just party all day on the fucking beach, and then go to Forest Park, sell fucking drugs, make money, get on the train, go back into the city. It was just it was a wild summer.
Right. And can you tell us about your best experience with Cro-Mags? What are your best memories?
I mean, there was a lot, just I think it was just like, I would have to generalize and say, like, nobody would touch us in the beginning, like, and when I became a monk from 82 to like right before 84, and I left the band. And so then Harley, saw me in 83, and I was feeding the homeless as a Hare Krishna in Tompkins Square Park. He's like, yo, I'm putting the band back together. I was like, this is my life now. Good luck. And then he put the band back together with Eric Casanova, and they did a couple shows, and he got fired. And then I ended up having, Kevin Paris, whatever his name he calls himself these days, wanted Roger from AF, and Harley wanted me. And I was like, I shouldn't even have to audition. I'm the original fucking singer. But Harley was just like, go and do what you do and you'll get, and that's what happened. And I just remember, like, nobody would fuck with us. We were living in a burnt out fucking building, and it was just real as fuck. And we just started rehearsing and getting tight, and then I started setting up shows for the Cro-Mags. And then we put out that demo in 85, which next year will be the 40-year anniversary. But I just remembered, like, it was like underground, but like we started packing shows, like, to see the momentum happen. And like, by the time, we went across the country or whatever the fuck, it was like, we were doing it on our own, man. We didn't have no management, no nothing. And to see the fire start catching on, man, as we're playing, and the word spreading. And then like, everybody's like, Bleecker Bob's, me and Harley walked in there with the cassette. He's like, you fucking losers. Nobody's going to buy this shit, type thing. And I remember I went back, and then like years later, he was selling the cassette for like, I don't know, $200. I was like, yo, Bob. He's like, you guys surprised the fuck out of me. I mean, if you know Bob, that was just his whole thing. But I mean, the Motorhead shows were great. You know, playing with GBH, opening up for the Bad Brains was epic because they're still to this day my favorite band in the world. I think like that was one for me was the Rock Hotel show in the Jane Street Theater where Cro-Mags opened up for Bad Brains, and it was like the first time Bad Brains ever played Reignition live. And they had Steve Remote used to have a truck which was a full studio, and he would park it behind outside the venue, and they were recording. He recorded the Bad Brains that night, but that was, I think, like a really good show for us, and it sticks out because you know Cro-Mags and Bad Brains in New York City, you can't go wrong, man. You know some crazy shit was gonna
Absolutely.
happen. And
And
I'm friends with this guy Danny Hamilton, and he was like, he saw me post something about Jean-Michel Basquiat and you know about the walking tour. I used to see him copping all the time. And Danny Hamilton is this photographer new to Bad Brains. And he's like, yo, I never told you this, but you guys were playing the Ritz with the Bad Brains, and Basquiat and fucking Andy Warhol were up in the fucking balcony, like watching you guys. And I was sitting with them, and they were completely fucking blown away by the whole, you know, kind of energy of the band. And then they saw Bad Brains, and you know, it's hard to put a finger on one specific moment, but you know,
yes,
to see all the hard work start to pay off. I was a bike messenger. I would take ice cold showers at the fire hydrant, ride my bike for 8 hours because I was AWOL. I caught a drug case. They were looking to put me in federal prison, so I split. So the only job I could get where I didn't have to show a social security card was a bike messenger. So that's what I did. And, you know, paying for the rehearsals and all that stuff, and then to see all that hard work start paying off was pretty fucking epic, man.
also, can you tell us a little bit about Saturday Night Live and John
Yeah,
Belushi and the Fear show at Saturday Night Live? And you were there, and I think
yeah.
they played Beef Bologna and New York.
New York's all right if you like saxophones. And
Yeah, yeah.
I
That was
mean,
a great
you
story.
know, I just saw Questlove's like comment. I think it might have been.
It was me. We were connected when I commented you. I was the
Oh
one that
yeah,
told
and
you.
he was like, "Well, I did my research, and this never happened." I was like, "Yo, bro, I was there. How you gonna fucking tell me something?" Well, you know, here's the thing. I was friends with Ian and them cats, so Ian told me a little bit of the backstory and filled it in of shit that I didn't know, which was he was sitting in D.C. at the Discord office, and the phone rang, and he picked it up, and he's like, "Yeah, hello." He's like, "Hey, is this Ian?" And Ian's like, "Yeah, who's this?" He's like, "This is Lauren Michaels from Saturday Night Live." And Ian's like, "Get the fuck out of here. Who is this? Stop fucking around." He's like, "It's Lauren Michaels and somebody wants to talk to you." And he hands the phone to John Belushi, and John Belushi's like, "Ian, I heard you got a fucking great scene down there. I got Fear on Saturday Night Live for Halloween. I want all you guys to come up and be in the audience and slam dance and show the world what punk rock is all about." So Ian and the boys came up, and I don't know, I think there might have been like 30 of them, and he came downtown looking to get more people, and I was the first person he ran into. He's like, "Yo, John, what's up?" You know, and I'm like, he's like, "Listen, we're playing, Fear's playing Saturday Night Live. Get whoever the fuck you can. Bring everybody up there. The password to get in is Ian Mackay." You know, so I rounded up whoever I could find at Tompkins Square Park. And there must be like 1,000 people that said they were there or whatever, but it was probably 75 of us. So I just gathered up whoever the fuck I could, and we all went up there. And you entered Dirty Rock, and I saw right away that it was like, all right, this is interesting because like here's the regular audience, and they kept us separated over here. And we were all fucking rowdy and like, fuck yeah, like, you know, fucking whatever, you know, punk rock. I'm fucking like 19 years old, And so they ushered us upstairs, and we got to hang out in the green room with like John Belushi and what's his name from Negative Approach. Got a mohawk from Belushi. They were doing mohawks and shaving people's heads, and Belushi was doing drugs. It was just wild. And then they said, okay, we were hanging out with Fear, and they said, well, the band always would do two songs, right? Like in the beginning, and then later on at the end of the night, they did this. So the first song, they kept us in this like room where like they locked the fucking door so we couldn't leave, and we had to watch the band play through this big fucking window, and we're watching the band. And then the second song, they brought us out, and Donald Pleasant, who was the host that night, was like, you could Google like Fear SNL, and you'll see him be like, he's like nervous, like, yeah, our Halloween guests this evening, they look quite frightening, but they're really not. And then he had to be like, and watch out for surprises. He had to warn the audience, and then they came on, and I had a black t-shirt and a shaved head. I think I dove off the left side of the stage or whatever. I wasn't even really like a huge Fear fan, but like I was like, fuck yeah. I mean, you're gonna be on TV and all that. And then when the shit started getting wild, one of the DC kids, like, tried to get all what we call hard body on, like, on some New York dude, and a fight broke out, and this guy Tony T-shirt, who was like a karate dude, like broke this DC kid's nose. And that's when this fight broke out. Ian MacKaye gets on the mic, and he's like, fuck New York, New York sucks. Like, and the security comes out, and they try to start stopping the show, like, to Lee Ving, like, that's it, okay, that's it. And Lee Ving just mushed the guy off the fucking stage and kept playing. But none of this is being shown to the people that was at home. As soon as Ian MacKaye cursed, they cut it off the air and ran some like fucking Eddie Murphy skit. But we kept fucking going in the studio. And then it just kept, they played another song, and then the head security dude comes out, and he's like, the police department's on the way. Everybody has to leave, like, trying to talk. And it was Halloween. There was all these pumpkins around. So my friend Tomas, he was this punk rocker from Spain, picks up a pumpkin and just launches it, hits this fucking dude in the head. He goes down. And then we just started like, we were knocking over cameras and all kinds of shit. And then this pumpkin fight, we just started launching pumpkins at each other, and the shits were like breaking open. People were fucking falling on the seeds and whatever the fuck, just chaos. And then the police department came in and were like, start fucking beating everybody. And we just took off down the halls of like Rockefeller Center out into the street. And we were like, holy shit. Everybody just hugging it out. And we went their separate ways, and I went back down to 171 Studio, the Bad Brains, and I was like, JW, I was like, yo, did you see that shit? He's like, they cut it off the air once Ian cursed.
Brilliant.
And like the next day, the paper said, I think it was the Daily News or the Post said, punk rockers do $250,000 worth of damage on the set of SNL. It was voted by Rolling Stone as the most rock and roll moment in NSL history, Saturday Night Live history recently. And, it was just one of those things. And funny enough, before I left the Cro-Mags, I think it was 2018, we played the Converse party at South by Southwest with Fear. It was Fear and Cro-Mags. And Lee Ving says to me, hey,